There's a quiet moment that happens sometimes. Someone casually says, "We should come over sometime." And instead of feeling excited, something inside you tightens just a little. You smile politely. You nod. Maybe you even say, "Yeah, that would be nice." But somewhere in the back of your mind, a small voice immediately starts calculating how to avoid it. Not because you dislike the person, and not because you hate people, but because the idea of having guests in your space feels strangely exhausting before it even happens. Some people feel this reaction very strongly. The moment someone suggests visiting their home, their brain quietly begins scanning for escape routes. Maybe they delay replying. Maybe they suggest meeting outside instead. Maybe they say they're busy that weekend, even when they're not. To the outside world, this behavior can look confusing. People sometimes assume it means someone is antisocial, or unfriendly, or even a little selfish. After all, hospitality is often treated like a social obligation. If someone invites you over, you return the gesture. If friends want to visit, you open your door. That's the unspoken rule in many cultures. But for some people, the experience of having guests over activates something deeper than simple preference. Because for them, home is not just a physical place. It's the only environment where their nervous system finally relaxes. And when guests arrive, even guests they genuinely like, that feeling changes. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts. The brain quietly moves from rest mode into performance mode. The couch is no longer just a couch. Now it's something someone might judge. The kitchen isn't just a kitchen anymore. It becomes something that needs to look presentable. Even silence in the room starts to feel different. This reaction has a lot to do with something psychologists call social monitoring. It's the brain's ability to constantly scan how we're being perceived by others. Everyone does it to some degree, but some people's brains run this system much more intensely, especially inside personal spaces. Because when someone enters your home, they're not just entering a room. They're entering your private world, your routines, your habits, your small imperfections. And for certain personalities, that exposure can feel surprisingly vulnerable. You might notice small behaviors connected to this. For example, some people spend hours cleaning before guests arrive, even when the home was already clean. Not because the mess mattered, but because the brain is trying to reduce the possibility of judgment. Other people quietly rearrange objects on tables or shelves, not consciously, just a subtle instinct to make the space feel more acceptable. And sometimes, even after the guests leave, there's a strange kind of exhaustion, not from the conversation itself, but from the mental effort of hosting. For some viewers, this might sound very familiar. Maybe you've noticed that you enjoy meeting friends, but you almost always prefer doing it outside your home. Restaurants feel easier, cafes feel lighter. Even a walk somewhere can feel more comfortable than sitting in your own living room with visitors. That's because those environments distribute the social attention. The setting itself becomes part of the experience. But when guests come to your home, the spotlight subtly moves toward you. Your space becomes part of your identity in that moment. And the brain instinctively wants to protect that identity. This reaction can also have roots in earlier life experiences. People who grew up in environments where their personal space wasn't fully respected often become very protective of it as adults. Their brain learns that home is the one place where they regain control. So when guests enter that space, even temporarily, the nervous system senses a shift in boundaries. It doesn't mean anything bad is happening, but the brain still reacts to the change. There's another small behavior some people notice. They often delay inviting people over for as long as possible. Not intentionally, but the thought simply doesn't occur to them as quickly as it does to others. For them, social life naturally happens outside their home. And sometimes, when someone unexpectedly asks to visit, there's a moment of quiet, internal panic, even if they eventually say yes. If you've ever noticed yourself doing this, you're definitely not alone. And if you enjoy exploring these quiet patterns of human psychology, subscribing to the channel helps more people discover these insights. Interestingly, psychologists have also observed that people who feel this way often value deep relationships. They just experience them differently. Their connection with others doesn't rely on constant physical hosting. Instead, it happens through meaningful conversations, shared activities, or long walks that stretch into the evening. The closeness is still there. It just doesn't revolve around their living room. There's also a paradox hidden in this personality pattern. The same people who dislike having guests over often care deeply about comfort and atmosphere. They love their space. They invest time in making it peaceful. But that's exactly why they protect it so carefully. Their home becomes a psychological recharge zone, and anything that disrupts that quiet equilibrium feels slightly draining. Some viewers may even recognize another mirror moment here. After guests leave, there's sometimes a small sense of relief, not because the visit was unpleasant, but because the environment finally returns to its familiar stillness. The lights feel softer again, the silence feels natural again, and the brain settles back into its baseline state. None of this means someone dislikes people. It simply means their mind organizes social energy differently. Some personalities recharge through shared spaces and gatherings. Others recharge through solitude and control over their environment. Neither pattern is better. Neither pattern is worse. They are simply different ways the nervous system maintains balance. And in a world that often celebrates constant social openness, people who quietly guard their personal space can sometimes feel misunderstood. But their behavior usually comes from the same place all human behavior does: the brain trying to protect comfort, safety, and emotional stability. There's also a hidden strength inside this pattern. People who treat their home as a sanctuary often become very aware of their emotional boundaries. They know how important environment is for mental recovery, and that awareness can lead to a deeper understanding of their own needs. In many ways, their home becomes less of a social stage and more of a place where the mind can finally rest without performing, which might explain why the idea of guests sometimes feels so complicated. Because when someone steps into that space, the brain briefly wonders if the sanctuary will still feel like one. But once the door closes again and the quiet returns, something important happens. The mind resets, the nervous system relaxes, and the environment returns to the one place where nothing needs to be explained. There are many quiet patterns like this hidden inside human behavior. Small reactions that seem strange at first, until you understand the psychology behind them. And if this one felt familiar, there may be other parts of your personality waiting to be understood in the same quiet way.